So where are we now? We are 21 months into a very deep, very long recession, the deepest and longest in the post-war period. It started very slowly in December 2007, very mild, drifting into recession, and then it gathered a full head of steam in September '08. We've already lost over 5% of the jobs that we had at the beginning of the recession. The previous maximum job loss was around 3%. And as you know, macroeconomic data is often revised. So far, all the revisions have only made the recession look worse than they did before. Okay, so here is a picture that, of a type that we actually do a lot at the Fed because we're obsessed with business cycles. And one of the things we do often is to compare business cycles to each other. And the way we do that is what we call a spider chart. And what a spider chart does is center the paths of various economic indicators around business cycle peaks or troughs so that we can compare the path of the business cycles. So this one is looking at payroll jobs. And along the bottom, you see the month since the recession began. So 0 is the month that the recession began, and all the months are after that. What I've done on the vertical axis is index all of payroll jobs to 1 at the beginning of the recession. Right? And then you can see the path of jobs for each of the recessions. So you can look at 73. 73 is unusual in that there was actually some job growth at the very beginning of the recession, but then job losses picked up dramatically. The other 4 recessions that you see there all started with job losses. The solid part of the line is the period of time, the months that are in the official NBER dated part of the recession. And then there's a star, that's the official end of the recession, and the dotted lines show you what happened during the recovery period. Right. The NBER didn't used to have to worry about the distinction between the labor market recovery and the economic recovery because there was only 1 or 2 months or maybe 3 months difference between them until the last 2 recessions when we got extended jobless recoveries. And they, after a long Talmudic discussion, they decided to date it by output. So the NBER dates are driven by output, not by jobs. Okay. So anyway, so the yellow line here shows the 2007 path of jobs, and what you can see is that 21 months out we are at 0.95% of the jobs. 95% of the jobs that we had before, we've lost 5% of our jobs. Okay, and you can also see that it is the longest period. Now, this star could, show up very soon, right? But it will still be the longest recession that we've seen. Okay, so now I'm going to start moving very quickly. What's happened to the unemployment rate? This shows you the path of the unemployment rate from '67 through 2009 through the last month. We have 2009. The shaded periods are the recessions, and you can see that while we haven't quite hit the peak unemployment rate that we had in 1983, we have the largest increase in unemployment that we've had for any recession, and we're getting very close to that peak rate. And if you look, if you adjust for demographics, for the fact that we have an older, therefore more stable workforce, and one way to do that is just look at prime age males. That's a way of adjusting, right? Then you can see that we have the highest unemployment rate for any recession. Okay. We've had a dramatic increase in long-term unemployment. So this, the blue bars show you the distribution of the length of unemployed workers in December 2007, the month the recession began, versus September '09, that's in gold. And you can see that the number of workers that were unemployed for less than 5 weeks is actually fairly similar, right? a little over 2,500, both those periods. But look at the people who've been unemployed for longer than half a year. That's gone from around 1 million, right, up to almost 5.5 million. Right? So it'll be a huge increase in people who've been out of work a very long time. If you break it down by demographic group, you see that all unemployment rates are up substantially. The whole increase has been from 4.9% to 9.8%. One thing I want to call your attention to is the huge gender gap that's opened up, with men having a much larger increase in unemployment than women. It's up to 10.3%, the highest it's ever been. A key factor in this is the industrial composition of jobs, that many of the jobs that have been lost have been in manufacturing, construction, transportation, finance, and those are male-dominated industries. What is more usual is the educational distribution, that obviously the least educated workers are faring worst. Okay, one other thing I'll point out is that small businesses seem to have been particularly affected. So comparing this to the last recession, these are job losses by size of establishment. And you can see that we've had a tremendous increase in job losses in the very smallest firms, okay, compared to what we had in the 2001 recession. Okay, so what's the outlook look like here? I'm relying on the Blue Chip Economic Indicators consensus forecast. That's something that you have to have a friend to see or pay for. But there's also the Survey of Professional Forecasters. That's available on the Philadelphia Fed website. So if you want to update this at any point, that's a quarterly exercise that they do. So that's a source for you if you ever need a forecast. That's a good place to go. The consensus forecast is that the labor market will deteriorate further, that the peak of the unemployment rate will be somewhere over 10% sometime in the first half of 2010. When will the recession be over? Well, the output recovery, as we heard in the GDP numbers yesterday, likely started in the third quarter of 2009. And this has been led by investment. So it's not by consumption, but by investment. The official end date, as I said before, is going to be based on output, industrial production, GDP, et cetera. And we see, we won't know if that's the official end of the recession until it's lasted long enough that we know we're really out of the woods, because sometimes recessions do have blips up and then things decline again. So.